What's going on, people? Hope you are all enjoying your Hallow weekends. Halloween was not this weekend this year. However, it is merely on Tuesday this year, but we are wrapping up. It's our final episode of October, our final episode of Shocktober. And the final episode before we get into the last 2 months of the year, we got another twofer for you guys. We have our Shocktober entry with Five Nights at Freddy's, the adaptation of the very popular video game that has been awaited a while. And now that it's here, well, we're going to talk about that. And then we are also talking about Pain Hustlers, the Netflix original that dropped today from director David Yates, who has literally only ever directed Harry Potter movies and one Tarzan movie starring Alexander Skarsgård. And this movie stars Emily Blunt and Chris Evans and is looking to immediately capture the Adam McKay, Craig Gillespie feel of what it's like to, be in the fast-paced world of crime, pharmaceuticals. Dustin, are you ready to talk about these two movies tonight?
I mean, I got nothing else to do. Let's do it.
It's going to be one of those nights, people, as you could probably already tell. On tonight's Shocktober finale of the Talking TV podcast. Stay tuned. What is going on, people? Happy All Hallows Eve. Happy the eve of All Hallows Eve.
The eve of the eve.
The eve of the eve, exactly. That's exactly it.
What the hell are you doing?
Listen, I just got back from vacation. My last vacation before the end of the year. I was at a wedding. I may still be a little drunk from that, just letting you know. But we're here to review a movie that was somehow, what's it called? For the first time, and I feel like all year, got the exact rating that it should have on Rotten Tomatoes, which you will not hear me say barely ever.
Right. What is it at now?
It was at 28% the last time I checked. I haven't checked it since then, since it first initially dropped, but it was already pretty low coming out of the gate, so it didn't exactly give me a lot of faith. And Dustin, I think this is the first time we've ever had this happen to us, where an adaptation of a very, very popular video game finally came out, but there had already been a better version of that story done that was completely original 2 years earlier. I mean, we may as well we may as well not even beat around the bush with this. Let's face it, the 2021 Willy's Wonderland entry, directed by, I'm looking up the guy's name right now because he deserves a shout out here.
I didn't see that movie.
Directed by Kevin Lewis. He was interviewed by by Joe of Guy at the Movies. Heavily about this movie. This is one of those movies that kind of got like a little bit of an extended life in the spring of 2021 when it initially dropped. It went directly to Hulu, and then obviously because of the little bit of a movement that Nick Cage had gotten at that point, that kind of propelled him, carried him later on in the year with Pig, and later on with Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So you have this premise, right? It's a very, very popular video game. I don't know the name of the game company. But the lore goes something along the lines of, you have this Chuck E. Cheese-esque place with these animatronics that have been possessed by the ghosts of children that were murdered there, and it's supposed to be a serial killer slash revenge thing where a security guard basically stumbles into all of this, and they have Josh Hutcherson set up as the lead. And Now, of course, going into this, right? So you have all the fans of Five. It's a classic video game. I should say a classic modern day video game adaptation scenario where you have all the fans who are just going to come out to watch it regardless of whether it's good or not. Just go back to the first Sonic movie, which kind of set the table for all the current video game adaptations that we've had as far as movies go. TV is the other part of that equation as well, but we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about the upcoming TV video game adaptation.
Yeah, it took after the first Sonic, all right. And
yes.
Dog shit.
Oh, save that. We're getting to it. Then you have this other movie that is completely not attached at all, but it's pretty much the same premise. But unlike this one, which is trying to be a little bit more genuine, if you can even call it that, is just understands completely what it is. This complete goofball camp factor. Nicolas Cage does not say a single word throughout the entire movie, and the rest of it, he's just smashing animatronics left and right. And it is just a complete cornball gore fest with some absolutely ridiculous effects, and even more bonkers and ludicrous twist. Some kills that are just absolutely perfect and actually violent, and actually exemplifies that, like, what it is going for. So with my knowing nothing about the game, like many video game adaptations that I watch, I think the first problem that I had with it is I was expecting to be a lot more violent. And of course that was cleared up when I realized I'm like, oh, why they rated it PG-13. Because like this is probably the most bloodless horror movie I think I've seen in recent memory. Like what Dustin, walk me through this. What the hell what the hell happened here?
From
like
the
what
first
happened?
scene, from the first scene of the movie, it already started off shitty with the guy like completely overacting, who's the security guard, just even running away. Can't do a simple task of running away and look like convincing. It's just unintentionally comical. And on top of that, we can't even fucking enjoy any gore. I know it's like it's the teaser, it's the beginning of the movie, but not even like a drop of blood, Dominic.
Right.
Like you were saying,
I think the most we get is like a bloody hand against like a glass pane.
sure, yeah, but
Pretty
like,
sure
this isn't the movie to tame, to go like
not at all
elementary on, because you want to see blood for this kind of fucking shit, like all these animatronic bears and this little cupcake thing, like all of those scenes that we saw in this movie of the guy getting his fucking face eaten by the cupcake, all of that would have been significantly more entertaining, or just entertaining with some blood, with some violence, because this movie has literally nothing to offer.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, really, because you take into consideration such the rich lore apparently that these video games have. Again, I'm only going based off what my friends who have played the game have told me. I know absolutely nothing.
I never played the game either.
about these video games and whatnot. And essentially what it is the story, if you can even call it that, is supposed to be he's a struggling guy who's trying to get over the death of his brother, but he also still has his little sister to take care of.
Oh, let's not even, you're rushing into that.
Already off the top of my head, I'm like, not this again. And that's before we even get into the stupidity with the electronics and with Matthew Lillard, which we will talk about Matthew Lillard when we get to that. But I think the first,
how can you not? Because he like starts like the events of this movie.
He does, but like, I just want to talk about the fact, like, can we talk about the fact of how Matthew Lillard gets mad at Josh Hutcherson for getting in the way? And I'm like, motherfucker, you're the one who gave the job in the first place. You didn't have to give him the job. Like, if you thought that this was seriously going to be like a major liability.
Josh Hutcherson is a security guard at a mall. And
not even a mall. Is it even a mall? I think it's just like a single, like.
No, it's a mall. It was definitely a mall.
At the beginning, you're talking about the beginning. Okay. That's how bad it was. I already forgot like the opening scene as to what leads him to Five Nights at Freddy's in the first place.
He lives with his sister. He works at a mall. He's like, they barely give him like a proper like introduction. He sees like this little kid in the middle of the mall, like alone, and like this aggressive man go up to the kid and like grab the kid and go yell at the kid and then just run away, like all suspicious like. And of course, Josh Hutcherson chases him down and doesn't even talk to him, just tackles him right into a water fountain and just knocks the shit out of him.
Yeah, right. Just starts getting on top and dogpiling him. I'm like, Jesus,
beating the shit out of him.
Give the guy a chance at least.
Because, like, of course, like, he doesn't do anything, just tackles him. And then that's supposed to justify, like, oh, it's because he didn't do anything when his brother got kidnapped when he was, like, 8. Like, he's really blaming himself. Like, his whole backstory is, like, just insane because how they skirted over the parents. Like, they kind of insinuated that the parents kind of blamed him. Like, without, they sort of imply that. He has this crazy aunt played by Mary Stuart Masterson, in which is like a fucking terrible worthy performance if I've ever seen.
That was a pretty bad performance.
Like, she, like, from the beginning, it's like she's in a totally different and worse movie, honestly. She's just so like comically, like grotesquely evil as his aunt.
Can we talk about what the plan was to get this kid back?
Oh, God.
That was like the reasoning is so that she could get the social security checks and whatnot. You know, Josh Hutcherson's younger sister who he has to take care of.
Sure.
And her plan is to have his babysitter try and get dirt on them, and then when that
babysitter's brother,
and then when that doesn't work,
they
decide to infiltrate Five Nights at Freddy's. And I know it's not called that; it's called Freddy Fazbear's. Whatever, I don't care. They decide to infiltrate Five Nights at Freddy's and trash the place and get him arrested and fired from his job, and that won't blow back on her at all.
Well, that plan didn't even make sense because he's only working the night shift.
Right.
You understand? There isn't a day shift worker, which doesn't make, none of this makes sense.
Right. Also, you know how he was complaining to Matthew Lillard about not being able to work nights? and he made
Yeah.
such a big deal about that in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yes.
And I'm like, but even before that, I'm like, motherfucker, you have a babysitter. Like, just like she clearly doesn't have a problem with spending the night if you get home late. Just do that.
I know, I know that was such like a non-issue as well. For him to just say that as an excuse, just because there has to be that reason for him to want to take the job even
Right.
more.
Right.
Other than just like he's not sure about. Like
Right.
they had to stretch it out for runtime.
Right.
I would guess. Which apparently, I think this movie was rumored to have like an over 2 hour runtime
Yeah, it was rumored, I
originally.
think, at one point to have like a 3 hour long runtime. And I'm like, Jesus
Which is
Christ,
like
how
I
much
really
more did they
doubt
have to
it.
cut?
Yeah,
How much
this
shit did
script
they have in this movie?
this script because like all of the issues in this movie, like with the Mary Stuart Masterson character, like none of that matters at the end of the day. None of
Right.
this
None
matters
of it.
because it's just all a typical run of the mill, boring horror movie.
Yes.
It's nothing new. It didn't make me as angry as Exorcist Believer did, which was, in my opinion, a little bit more incomprehensible. This was just lazy. This was just annoyingly tame and just an utter waste of like a great talent in Josh Hutcherson,
Yeah.
who, and for my money, is one of the great child actors of his generation, and is unfortunately not. He hasn't like
Cratered
crashed,
out,
and
but
he hasn't crashed and burned yet.
he
But
is a guy
movies
who
like
is
this aren't giving him doing him
yeah.
a favor at
He
all.
he is a guy. He is unfortunately one of those actors that is
Yeah.
just like slipped through the cracks, where his agent is just not getting him the right roles. And it
Yeah.
sucks because Josh Hutcherson is truly a talent. Every time he's been good in something recently, he's been great. But it's like outside of like a couple of like he had that Future Man show on Hulu, which is like one of the
Yeah.
early Point Grey TV shows that they did before they kind of hit it big with The Boys. But man,
Yeah,
talk
which
about
he
somebody who is
carried,
just
yeah.
being underserved by the current what's it called, by the current quality caliber of scripts that are being sent his way. Because good lord, you want to talk about something in order to like try and get back into the fan base. This was just not it. It really wasn't.
Yeah, this was a paycheck movie for him because anybody could have done this role. I mean, this doesn't really give him anything new to work with. It's just a generic character with a really horribly written backstory. And the kid who played his sister too was an awful child actress, just terrible. And just
I wasn't as I wasn't as annoyed by her as I was by the aunt. I'll say that.
sure, which that
Yeah.
doesn't
It was like a
doesn't
typical
go well
child
for Mary
and
Stuart
like what I'll
Masterson.
say
Yeah.
too is that when it comes to the twist, trust me, I have another performance that really irked me. But I will say that the twist, if you will, in the second half, which I don't even know if you can call it a twist in hindsight, but like I guess just because in my mind I was comparing this so much to Willy's Wonderland, that when the animatronics turned out to not be like just completely murderous and were just like possessed by the spirits of the dead kids, I'm like, okay, that like sort of got me interested in again. But once I was able to figure out, I'm like, okay, because when you keep seeing the dead kids at the beginning, I'm like, okay, we've seen this before. This is Sinister. This is Black Phone. It's all the spirits of the dead kids that are coming back to possess the animatronics, which afterwards I was convinced, I'm like, okay. But a couple things. One, that still doesn't explain why the animatronics just murdered the biker gang at the beginning. It's like, okay, so they're not kids. So they're just open season, but they don't touch Josh Hutcherson. But they killed the security guard at the beginning. So I'm like, okay, so there's already some inconsistencies there to begin with. As far as them being
it's
kids.
only when the script calls for it.
Right. It's only when the script calls for it. But not only that, but they systematically bide out their time in terms of like when they can bring the little girl in. It's like correct me if I'm wrong. The only people who they've killed up to this point before the gang of delinquents at the beginning are the previous security guards. So like, why were they so adamant about getting him and his sister to join them, especially because the only other person that he's killed besides the initial five is his brother. And also, if his brother was killed, why isn't he possessing one of the animatronics?
Right.
Like, just so many questions that abound. And I'm like, this was supposed to be the next great video game movie. This is the movie that everyone is like, and of course, I break this out of my friends. I'm like, in what part am I supposed to be scared of this, or at what point am I supposed to like really buy into the story? Because I'm not getting either one. And then, of course, guess what they hit me with? Just take a guess. You'll already know it.
Matthew Lillard is the killer.
No, they're like, you don't understand the lore, and I'm like, ooh, the lore.
Oh,
the lore. Please inform me of the rich lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, and there wasn't. At least
Yeah,
not.
right. There's no guy in the game that's based off like Josh Hutcherson's character at all.
Right.
Like there's no guy with a dead brother that he's like
No,
trying to like
it's a
lucid
first person
dream.
shooter where you just walk around and get
Yeah,
scared by these
exactly.
giant
It's like
animatronics, which I
it's
love too.
Doom.
I
Yeah.
love how people were saying, "Oh man, Freddy Fazbear, ready to be scared by him." I'm like, I'm sorry, y'all are about to be scared by a giant animatronic teddy bear. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like this is what we're scared of now?
None of it was scary, man. It was just like laughable after a while, and like none of the logic made any sense. And just we didn't even talk about the Elizabeth Lale character yet.
Right.
Like
So who
the
I was
police
getting to.
officer. Yeah.
So Beck from the first season of You, while it was still on Lifetime before
Mhm.
Netflix bought it, shows up, and immediately I'm just like, I'm pretty sure that's where the first act like cratered out. Like the first act was already pretty bad to begin with, but at the very least it was engaging me somehow. But then she shows up and she's giving the same wistful but tone like manic pixie dream girl. It's like, oh my god, like really we're doing this? And I'm like, okay, I already know exactly what's gonna happen, where she's gonna somehow be connected to the creatures. Where also, can we just go over like her job as a cop, where her job as a cop is to like somehow immediately give away the fact that she's got some shared history with the place, like the most unsubtle showing. I'm like, also, what cop is breaking their rounds to go inside and show this guy the ropes? Also, why is there nobody here to show this guy that like works at the place? Like, why do they need a security guard? But like, to my
But
knowledge, like Matthew Lillard,
yeah.
like did they ever establish that Matthew Lillard actually owns the place? Like, I thought he was just like a guy who helped him get jobs. Like,
Like I said, it
what?
doesn't make any sense, Dominic.
I'm so confused, Dustin. I'm legitimately confused. Help it make sense.
First of all, they call him on his desk. It says career counselor.
Right, right. That's what I'm saying.
It's already
That's what I'm saying.
that's already wrong. That's not what it's even called. It's like a career no, like a job agency,
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
job agency.
yeah.
Like it's not I don't think that's what it's even called. But like no, he hinted at like his little speech in the beginning where he was like, "Oh, I guess the owner, has is keeping it up because of nostalgic reasons or whatever." And that's as much explaining as we're going to get for this guy
Right.
because it ends up in the third act because of course Matthew Lillard was way too creepy in the beginning of this movie, which I predicted was like, oh, he has to be the killer if
So
he's going to be
naturally, he has
so
to be the
fucking
killer.
vague. He has to be so vague in the beginning of this movie and kind of creepy to where it's like, oh yeah, he has to be the mastermind of this whole thing. And him having the daughter is like, why even have her be his daughter? I was just like, because when it's explained that
Right.
like he kidnaps his brother years ago, which also doesn't make sense because don't the kids that go missing at Freddy Fazbear's, they don't get missing in the woods, right?
Right. Like,
So like why they
also,
completely restructured this
right.
movie, I
Also,
feel
like,
like.
yeah, that was another question. I'm like, where the hell did these kids die? Because how are they coming to Josh Hutcherson? Which also, we haven't even talked about how Josh Hutcherson like communicates with the kids. Which
Oh, that's like
we'll save
Inception
that. We'll
bullshit.
save that for in a little bit. But continue.
Oh my god, nothing. It's just nonsense. It's just complete nonsense with Matthew Lillard saying I'm pretty sure that line where he said, "And I killed your brother." Like I'm pretty sure that was like 80 yard.
Yeah, yeah, it
Like,
was.
'cause,
I
like
didn't
it
see. I didn't
doesn't
see him
make
utter those
sense.
lines.
Because like why? Like 'cause to your point, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, why wouldn't one of the brothers? Like why wouldn't the brother be one of the animatronics? You
Exactly.
know? But
Exactly. What did they run out of animatronics for his body to go in? I'm assuming that's what it is. I think there were
no,
only
but
5 animatronics, and there were 5 other kids murdered besides him because I know he was the 6th.
sure, but they didn't even need to do that. You know what I mean? Like they could have just made him one of the kids. It doesn't
Well,
even
right,
matter at
and that's
this
what I'm
point.
saying is like I will at the very least give them credit for this. They did somewhat state that like okay, it can't just be that like the bodies possess a random animatronic. There has to be an animatronic for him to like store the bodies in because they had established that they were storage units for the bodies as well.
And it also doesn't make sense, like about Elizabeth Lale's character that she's just what is she just covering up her father's like
I I
murders?
I, I guess. I
Like she's
guess.
just completely covering up, so she's not going to jail at the end. Of,
Well,
what
she
I mean?
is a cop, and if I had to
So
guess, she's
what?
probably the only cop in that town. It doesn't exactly seem like a
Wow.
very big town. But then
I
again, also
mean,
that's the other thing. This
whatever.
establishes that like there's 3 locations in this entire movie, so like they clearly don't get to establish like the actual
all
size of like
interiors,
if anyone like at the very least, this is another instance that I'm gonna keep going back to Willy's Wonderland because Willy's Wonderland is so much better than this. At the very least, Willy's Wonderland establishes that this is a very, very small, isolated town away from society, and that everybody who helps cover it up, I'm talking the people who set the traps for the cars, like the towing company, the sheriff of the town, are all in cahoots in order to like keep this thing covered up. Versus here, it's like, so you have this random schmuck that Matthew Lillard is playing, who's also the serial killer that like nobody's investigated ever, like ever.
And also, just one big important point: he's supposed to be this owner of this 80s restaurant, right?
Right.
He would have been like a teenager in the 80s,
right?
So like, what the fuck is this story?
Unless they're trying to age him up, like.
But they didn't though. He looks like he would now.
Not like, even a teenager because he played a fucking teenager in Scream. I know he was in his 20s, but like
but he would have actually have been like a teenager in the 80s. Like is what I'm saying. Like
so that doesn't even make sense.
So that's what I mean. Like, so he had a daughter in the 80s, and like,
how old was he when he had this kid? Like 15?
Is he supposed to be like in his 70s? This character, like, I don't like. It didn't look like that. Like,
not at all.
At all. Like, he seemed completely fine, and like. That whole thing where you were saying with him in the animatronic suit, that's such a stupid idea. That's so stupid. This whole movie's stupid. I only gave this like a 2 out of 5, but it deserves lower. I feel
no, this is that.
Because like
I don't know if I can give this a 2. After it was a 2 in my head.
I'll say some of the good things. It has an okay score. It has it has
good production design. That the way that they do the animatronics is cool, but they still do the
good
stupid
visual effects.
Keep it also, what was with the cupcake animatronic? Like I got the like the other 4. Like okay, they could walk around. They could only move certain slowly because they were still animatronics at the end of the day. But just this cupcake animatronic that just zooms around and just bites people. And like also okay. Can we talk about the dream sequence? Because this is probably the thing that left me with the most questions. So the whole premise, right, is that Josh Hutcherson, when he gets this job, he's been having dreams about his brother, right? It's the whole thing, right? It's losing his brother in the woods. It's traumatized him for years. He spent years trying to figure out what's going on, right?
Yes.
And so once he starts working at this place, he begins to have dreams where he's like, okay, I could like almost think and remember if who kidnapped my brother. If I just go back into the dream and look at the same details over and over again, I'm like, okay, first of all, when did this become Inception where you can just go into and manipulate your own dreams? That's question number 1. But then question number 2 is somehow, also like Inception, if you get injured in the dream, you can get injured in real world. So that was a thing. They just never explained that.
But sometimes that meant that he was asleep and the animatronics would actually be the ones.
Right, but like,
which made no sense.
Yes, no sense at all, at all. And then this is the best part, where so apparently it's the spirits of the kids that are trying to communicate with him and get him to leave his sister with them because their way is okay. So they've done this before. They've killed the security guards, but never with other kids. At least not that's been established. And they're like, okay, you can have your brother back. You can stay in Dreamland forever if you give us Abby. And I'm like, what fucking logic does this make? Like, they're trading one kid who's not real that they killed for another one that is real. Like,
I felt so bad.
This movie's stupid. This movie's stupid.
I felt so bad for Josh Hutcherson in that scene because the look on his face was just like, what the fuck am I doing in this? Like, what am I doing in this movie? Like, literally, he's dead. Right? Like, and I hated that the movie was unclear about the brother even being dead, you know, until Matthew Lillard 80 yards his way into the movie. To be like,
I probably realized, you know what that was? They probably realized, like, at the last minute that they're like, shit, we never actually, we've been making so ambiguous about this. We didn't actually realize that we, like, solidified that the brother's actually dead. We should probably throw in a line there just to solidify that.
Yeah, yeah. And what about that line Elizabeth Lail had where she's just like, oh yeah, I didn't know your brother was involved, at least until now. Oh my God. And I was just like, what is that? What are you talking
about? It's like, how does that make sense?
None of her dialogue made any sense. And then halfway through the movie, she goes, hey, I'm just trying to I've been trying to help you in my own way. And then I paused the movie. I was like, by how? Saying nothing? The entire movie? You've just been talking in circles the entire movie.
Oh my God. I can't wait until I just make the array of TikTok clips and just put these up like 5 a day and just like roasting this movie because this movie sucked. Like, Actually, so like Bottoms previously was my least favorite movie of the year, but I think this might take the cake because this was just unlike the rest of the movies of the year, where like I always have like different reasons for like why movies make my worst of the year, and there was turns out a lot more that were eligible this year than I originally realized. But
Yeah.
man, this is just stupid. Felt like a waste of time. Was overhyped by a crowd that frankly does not look for the same things in movies as we do, and just as a movie itself was just poorly made. It just poorly made. It didn't make sense. It had certain good
Poorly
aesthetics, but that's
conceived,
about it.
yeah.
But it's poorly conceived. Any sort of good idea got ruined by just another stupid gimmick that came up in the next minute. Like, probably, like, okay, so at the very least, a horror movie is supposed to have two things: people running down hallways and getting chased by something, and good jump scares. And this movie somehow had neither of them. It had people running down hallways. It didn't have any good chase sequences because they're getting chased by giant animatronics who can't run, who can't walk very slowly. They also the fucking taxi scene, like just what, just what, just talking about failing as a basic horror movie. And then you have like some of the worst jump scares ever, because at the end of the day, it's like a jump scare, right? It's like, okay, so again, these things are big and clunky, so you can't do the whole they sneak up behind you. That happens in every single horror movie. But also, I'm supposed to get scared by a cupcake biting somebody on the ass. Like, that's wow, ooh, scary. Like, this movie's stupid. This movie's really, really dumb. Like, really dumb.
No, I don't remember whether or not they established, like, did we see them get out of the cab?
No, I don't think so.
All right, because there's definitely a scene on the editing room floor of like that taxi driver getting killed.
Yes,
Probably
because
there
there's no
has
way the
to
taxi
be.
driver made it. But that was just another. Like,
Because
I
like
know
it
there were like
wasn't an
a
Uber, it was a
yeah,
taxi, so they have
which
to
is
pay them.
crazy. Like,
And who has
so
money? Does the little girl have money?
so
No.
many questions. No, so wait, we're expected to believe that the animatronic called a taxi. So wait, the animatronic walked to the house,
Yeah, he
right?
walked to the house
Walked to
first
the
of
house,
all.
killed the ant, and then called a taxi. Like,
Yeah. And you can't set up all these annoying, fucking awful people, caricatures of characters that we're supposed to have, like Mary Stuart Masterson and the babysitter's brother and his friends and all the hooligans or whatever. You can't set them up as like the worst people on planet Earth and then give us no satisfying kills. That's just awful. And
right?
and going back to when he left, Josh Hutcherson, when he left with the cop and everything, and then they break in through the side. And then later, Elizabeth Lale like blames Josh Hutcherson and his sleeping pills
Right?
for that. And I'm just like, well, you saw him lock the door. What are you talking about? They didn't even break in that way. They broke in through the garage door on the side of the building. So like, why don't you have another security guard for the daytime? I don't understand this movie. This movie sucked.
This movie is awful. And the more and more we talk about it, the more and more I hate it. I just wanted to give a shout out to all my friends out there that somehow love this movie. And I just want to say thank you.
No, my
Thank
brain
you for
dead.
making me sit through this piece of shit movie, because it reminded me that there can actually be some fun to be had. Because I will admit, I have not had this much fun roasting a movie in a minute. It's been a hot minute. You know, we've had a pretty good streak, you know, of movies where it's either they're pretty satisfying, or they're
Yeah.
just so boring that they're just not even worth talking about. But this is a fun one, because this is a movie that just sucks in every conceivable way. And
Yeah,
we
but this is
haven't
like
had one of these
dull.
in a minute.
This is like a dull, like bad time though. Like, yeah, it's fun talking about it like one time in retrospect, but I don't see us going back to this movie just to
Oh no, not in the
rewatch it,
slightest. Not in the
just to
slightest.
rewatch it in like a so bad it's good quality because it's not even
No,
memorable. It's
it's
not
not even
even good
that.
in that kind of a way. It's
It's
just a
definitely not
bad,
that.
dull
I would
one off.
never ever
Yeah.
gift that category that is so precious to me of being so bad that it's entertaining on this movie, because that's not what
No,
this
it's not
that's not what
Aloha
this was
level at
at all.
all. No,
Definitely not. Definitely not.
not Aloha level. No.
Yeah. Which in that case, let's get to the next movie and finish talking about this stupid movie, because we've already wasted enough time on it. I could bear. I'm giving this like a 1 star, maybe. Like I can't even give this a full
I'm gonna
2.
give. I have to give this a 2 out of 5, just because I have seen a little bit worse this year, like the Ghosted movie with
Oh
Chris
God,
Evans and
that
Anna de
fucking movie.
Armas.
I was not watching that. There's no way in hell I was watching that.
Yeah, so that's still terrible. And like,
Also,
yeah,
with a
yeah,
cast like that, how did you screw that movie up? Ghosted.
I know Adrian Brody. Well, Anna de
What the
Armas.
hell?
Anna de
What is going
Armas
on?
in a comedy. That's how
Right.
you fucked up. But and the movie just sucks. But anyway, Yeah, 2 out of 5 for Five Nights at Freddy's. I enjoyed some of the, technical aspects of this film. I don't think it was completely poorly made. I think it was more poorly conceived and edited, and I think it was fucked with in the editing bay. I
Yeah,
think this was definitely supposed to be R.
definitely, and yeah,
It
definitely
had to
another
have been
instance of
R,
an R
and I
and
don't
getting
know
turned into a
why.
PG-13.
I don't even understand the logic behind Jason Blum, you know, being okay with this being PG-13 because
Right?
yeah, it's gonna make money either way. Like the hype for this movie and the fandom for
I'm
this movie,
assuming that was
it
just
would
because of
have
the
made
kids. He
money
wanted
anyway.
all the kids to go because he knew that this was gonna be
Sure,
big for, like, the
they'll
under
they would all
25
sneak in
crowd.
anyway, but like
True, yeah.
going to
They would have convinced their
PG-13,
parents and older siblings and whatever, and if not, they would have
yeah,
snuck in, like,
they would
there's
have
no
snuck in
way this movie wouldn't have
regardless.
made a profit.
Exactly, and we would have gotten a better movie for it. And PG-13 movies, horror movies rather, are the worst movies
They're
to
awful.
see
They're
in
actually
theaters
terrible. I've never seen
because
a good one.
not even the movies themselves. It's just the worst experience to go to a PG-13
Yeah,
horror movie because of the crowds that they attract. And I'm
yes.
sorry, I'm going to talk shit about them because they're annoying and
Oh,
they
absolutely.
usually don't even go to the movie to watch the movie. It's just a
Right.
bunch of annoying teenagers trying to finger their girlfriends, and it's annoying, and they're just talking the whole time in their phone. Their faces are illuminated by their phone screens. It's just fucking, they're not even there for the movie. I
Right.
hate it. And yeah, this movie was a waste of time, and Josh Hutcherson deserves much better. And I think he gave a way better lead performance than this movie deserves, even though the script really doesn't give him much to
Yeah, I was about
do.
to say,
Matt,
you're giving him way more credit than I'm
I
willing
am,
to.
but he's not giving a bad performance in
No,
this
no,
movie, though.
he's
He is
easily
still
the best one.
trying,
He's the
but
best one.
and Matthew Lillard still like he's given a shitty role, but he's still like reveling in it, and he's a go-to guy for that kind of material. But this movie was just a misfire. It's just an awful script, awful conception of ideas. It's just bad.
Yeah.
It was trying to be so many different kinds of horror movies without eliciting any scares whatsoever. It was trying to be more like Inception than a Nightmare on Elm Street
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, bad movie, bad conception, just really, really bad. So, probably surprising to a lot of people. This is, even though this is the last weekend of October, next weekend we're into November. We're really into award season. I'm planning on watching Anatomy of a Fall and The Holdovers this coming week. And then the following week, some of the other entries we've got this month, we've got The Killers, we've got Saltburn, we've got Napoleon, we've got a couple other ones that I'm forgetting off the
Good
top of
Burger
my head.
too.
Good Burger 2, of course, the Academy caliber Good Burger 2. But we're going to talk about a little, for the second half of this podcast, we're going to talk about a little bit of an interesting one because this one that I feel like is going to fly under a lot of people's radars. But I guess what's interesting about this one is the fact that, again, even in 2023, this should kind of be like a hit. But it's almost like this was an instance where like Netflix knew that this could have been an awards movie, but then because of both, what's it called? Then because them decided to put all and focus all their efforts on Maestro as their big Oscar contender. And then they have and then obviously with the Killer and with the kind of cloud that Fincher has with them still, with Netflix coming out in November, they decided to push this one out on Halloween in October. And I really think that's kind of doing Pain Hustlers a little bit of a disservice because I will acquiesce and say that I've only seen the first 20 minutes so far of this movie. I'm planning
Yeah.
on finishing it after the podcast. So Dustin, I'm going to let you run with this one primarily. You're not as hot on it as I am, but from what I've seen,
No.
it's pretty good so far from what I've seen. And I guess
That's
what's so
what I thought
interesting
too,
about it
yeah. Mhm.
is the fact that this is the first, like I said in the preamble for this is the first non-Harry Potter or franchise movie that David Yates has directed. David Yates has directed a lot of TV and a lot of theater, but has not directed that many non-franchise movies. So I guess this is kind of a little bit interesting, especially when this feels like such a familiar kind of taken formula for this type of a story, which we've seen before, as we've seen people like Adam McKay and we've seen
Yeah.
people like Craig Gillespie just recently with what he did with Dumb Money as well, seem to have kind of taken over the spot. So Dustin, haven't seen this full movie. Tell me what your thoughts were. We'll first start off when you first saw the trailer, and then obviously as the more trailers came out, we kept talking about it, and then up until your final thoughts to when the movie finally came out.
Well, I was looking forward to this movie for about a year, I would say. I've been reading up, about the production about it a little bit, and I saw that it had Emily Blunt and Chris Evans, and I was like, oh, I love both of them, so like it's gonna have like this sort of like Wolf of Wall Street esque kind of feel to it, but for like the pharmaceutical reps. And this movie's getting a lot of shit. Was getting a lot of shit preemptively just because of those shows, Dope Sick and Painkiller, which
Right,
also Netflix just put out, which I thought
right,
was really fucking good, better than Dope Sick.
really,
Yeah, definitely way better. And Pain Hustlers, it focuses on solely the pharmaceutical reps rather than like the Sacklers. And I forgot the name of the drug that this movie is
It's like
focused on. It's like Framagen. It's like
Clofemin,
Lofragen.
something like that. Here, I'll look it up.
It's like Lofragen or it's like some
Yeah.
bullshit. But yeah, I saw the reviews coming out of TIFF, and they were definitely not good. They were very below average, very mixed to negative, and that kind of stung me a little bit. But then the trailer came out not that long ago, like a month ago, and I was like, this looks better than everyone's saying. At least, it looks okay. It looks like it has some promise. Emily Blunt, Chris Evans, and yeah, that's all this movie really has is them.
Oof.
And that's Emily
Oof.
Blunt and Chris Evans. And Emily Blunt plays this like down and out like character. She sort of starts out like, a Constance Wu sort of character in Hustlers, which was also based off a true story, but more prevalently because I feel like this movie is just a bunch of like, what do they call those like characters based off like real people, but they're not quite the real people, you
Oh,
know?
caricatures?
No, not the caricatures, but like it's like there's another term for it. Like it's how like Jonah played Peter Brandt in Moneyball
Oh, it's
and like
a combination of different real life people.
yeah,
Yeah.
Danny Porsche was like the real guy, not
Yeah.
Donnie Azoff in Wolf of
Yeah.
Wall Street.
Yeah.
And like so that the fact that this movie is just sort of telling like a generic like origin story for this Emily Blunt character who's like a way smarter than her circumstances might tell you, but she's a very smart person who had a kid way too young, which is usually the case for some of these stories. But she has like a mixed race kid. The girl from the Spy movie with Dave Batista, Chloe
Oh,
Coleman.
that's who that is.
Yeah, they
My
got the white.
Spy, that
Yeah,
one?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they got some black guy who's
I
like
was
off
wondering. Yeah, I was
screen.
wondering. I was
Yeah,
wondering who that was.
yeah, and like her ex-husband is like we barely even like we never see him on screen ever. He's just supposed to be this like generic
Right.
ex-husband asshole who doesn't believe in Emily
Oh,
Blunt.
yeah, I know who. Yeah, she was in Gunpowder Milkshake and the Dungeons and Dragons movie as well.
That's right. Uh,
Oh, she was in Big Little Lies. That's where I recognize her from. I'm
yes,
like, I've seen her
yes,
before. Yeah, she's Zoe Kravitz's daughter.
that's right. That's right.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but so she's
She
like
got
working at
whiter as time went on.
she's working as a stripper at this strip club. No, she's working as a stripper at a Best Buy. No, but no, but Chris Evans sees her and she she notices that he's like kind of like a different kind of sleazeball. Like she can kind of finesse him, like, and he kind of takes to her also. Like he knows that she's like kind of like smarter than her circumstances suggest, like I was saying. And he gives her card. She's totally in trouble. Like she gets kicked out of her house, or her sister's house, which her family doesn't believe in her really, which is like really mean and everything. And like, yeah, the movie did a good job setting up Emily Blunt's character, and Emily Blunt did a good job because she's great. The problem I have with this movie is that when she gets into the pharmaceutical industry, she does start to notice like over halfway through the movie that what she's doing isn't right. And I feel like that was a little too easy for this movie to go for, in my opinion, because they should have made her more of like a Jordan Belfort, more like an unquestionably like shady person, not someone who's just automatically going to be like sympathetic to what, even though they're doing terrible things. It's just
Of
like,
course.
and Chris Evans, I felt like it would have been, yeah, it would have been typical, but it would have been at least more interesting and entertaining if he was the main character of this movie, because
Yeah.
he's really fun in this and
Yeah,
he's having a
he's
lot of
great in this.
fun.
From what I've seen so far, he's awesome. He's having
Yeah,
it's great doing the accent. It's good.
yeah,
It's
the
good
Boston
finally seeing
accent, yeah.
Evans get back into like his sleazeball era, between this and then last year in The Gray Man, which I know a lot of people
Oh, he
didn't
was
like,
good
but
in that,
I
yeah.
actually Sumi, I may be the only person to say it, but I like The Gray Man. I had a lot of fun with that. I thought Evans and Gosling were both great in that, bouncing back and forth with each other. The action was fun. I don't understand what people really hated about The Gray Man. I really don't.
Well, it was a very generic and predictable and like
Sure,
kind
but
of
like not
badly
to a
lit
point that was like
movie.
egregious to me personally.
No, no,
Like
it wasn't. I didn't hate that movie like some people did, but to me, it was definitely like a mixed bag. It was definitely elevated by its leads, especially Evans, who's really having a hell of a time in that movie. But yeah,
yes,
like you're saying, like he's having a ball here, playing this shady character, but also sort of sympathetic. But yeah, he was the more interesting one because Emily Blunt, they're trying to paint her as like this like innocent sort of like, but very smart. It's like they don't know where to land with that
of
character.
course,
And that
it's they want to give her some edge, but they're afraid because they have to make her also like wholesome because that's just required, and it makes
yeah.
it makes no sense because you can't have it both ways.
And
Like
I
like
don't yeah, I don't like when this movie also brings in, like, the fake family members of,
oh
like,
god,
of other, like, and it'd be like, "This affected our family." Like, they have people in black and white,
of course,
that's, like,
of
so,
course.
like, trite now, I feel like. But and I'm not saying this has a bad cast, it has a pretty good cast. Andy Garcia shows up as, like, this crazy eccentric doctor who's, like, the head of the pharmaceutical company that they work for, I think, and he's very, very, fun to watch, Andy Garcia. I like when they give Andy Garcia a good role to chew on, but even by the end, I feel like they turn his character, into pretty generic, and, like, you see the picture of the real guy at the end of the movie of who he's really playing, I feel like they could have went even weirder with that guy, but this movie felt a little gutless, and I was thinking about this guy who directed the movie, David Slade, and I was thinking,
David
yeah, he's
Yates,
or David Yates or whatever. Yeah, David Slade's the other guy.
David
Who
Slade has got some pretty
no,
good stuff under his belt.
he's the guy who did Twilight at one point. I always get those two.
Oh yeah. But I believe he also did 30 Days a Night as well,
No,
which
yeah,
is
you're
good,
right. You're right. Uh,
and an episode of Black Mirror, if memory serves.
that's right. He did
Yes,
Bandersnatch, right?
I think so. Actually,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Redeemed. But this guy, yeah, he's only directed Harry Potter movies and
Yep,
that one
and Tarzan, and yeah,
Skarsgård.
yes, correct.
Yeah,
Directed the last 4 Harry Potter movies, directed Tarzan, and then directed
Skarsgård.
all 3 Fantastic Beasts movies, which have not been good.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about the Fantastic Beasts movies, but
As you shouldn't, because they are terrible.
this whole movie, I was like, this would have been a lot better if Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden directed this, and he directed fucking a Marvel movie or something.
Right? Right?
Because like this is
How has
definitely
that not
way up
happened?
their
Also,
alley.
by the way, he's
I
just
don't
under
know.
lock and key at Warner Brothers,
I don't know
apparently.
because like this movie was like tone deaf in terms of like it just didn't know how to properly. It had a shitty soundtrack, really shitty soundtrack.
Yeah, that
Some
soundtrack was
parts,
kind of out of nowhere.
yeah, there's some really shitty parts. Like Brian Darcy James has the best part of the movie, probably, where he gets to sing "Closing Time" by Semisonic. Like that's the best part of the soundtrack. And okay, but yeah, I just didn't. I didn't like the direction. I thought like it was just clumsy. Credit cues. Like when this movie ends, it's so awkward and like you're just scratching your head, being like, "Yeah, I know the opioid crisis is bad. You really didn't tell me anything, and you didn't give me like an interesting character study. It was just sort of in middle of the road. Good performances. Emily Blunt. This is the best she's been in a few years. Chris Evans is having a time of his life at points. I wish the movie was focused on him more so than the generic like arc that Emily Blunt has. I didn't even mention her mother, played by Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah, right?
Uh,
Like, they set her up as like a pretty
yeah,
seeming substantial character. Does that go anywhere? Or
no, like she kind of sleeps with Andy Garcia, and then that kind of goes absolutely nowhere. And she gives her like a guilt trip, even though she was like a
of
negligent
course.
mom. It's just all run of the mill, like typical stuff. And I wish Netflix, they've been turning out pretty good stuff
Yeah, it's actually kind of
lately.
been surprising
And
me. I'm like, Fall of the House of Usher, I liked. I'm like, shit,
yeah, very good.
Netflix finally actually getting back to making some good stuff.
But this was just a completely mediocre, average movie by the end of the day, and I think you can get a lot more entertainment out of Netflix with this same subject matter in Painkiller. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
just feel like there's a more broader spectrum of storylines going on in that show, and the performances are more interesting, and the writing is better.
So explain to me real quick, as somebody who did not watch Dope Sick or Painkiller, just taking those two, because I remember when I asked you when that came out, I'm like, didn't they already do this show, but as Dope Sick? And you were like, yeah. I'm like, so why are they doing it again? So what is it that you would say makes Painkiller better than Dope Sick?
It's like the Candy shows with Elizabeth Olsen and Jessica Biel.
Yeah, it's the exact same story, just different
Yeah,
cast.
different networks.
Yeah.
And casts, obviously. That
Yes.
would be weird if they made the same show twice, but with the same cast. That'd be funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just felt like the Painkiller show. It was like that was run by Peter Berg, you know.
Oh,
And I just
that's
felt like
right.
the episodes were directed with a lot more energy and like passion, and I just felt like you're just going through all the you can just predict everything that's happening in Dope Sick more, and it's just more annoying to watch because some characters make just really dumb decisions just for the sake of the plot to move forward, and I just feel like it was just way too melodramatic for my taste. And
Yeah,
it's
it
well
looked
acted,
melodramatic from the Emmy
but
clips they submitted last year.
I felt like the addiction storyline with Taylor Kitsch and Painkiller is a lot more successful and a lot less head scratching than the Caitlin Dever subplot on Dope Sick.
Interesting.
Just because of Taylor Kitsch's performance, which I think he was terrific on that show. And Matthew Broderick, I think, just turns in like a creepier and a more memorable performance as Sackler compared to Michael Stuhlbarg on Dope Sick.
Interesting.
Maybe that's just
Interesting.
me.
And
I'm
who
the
has the Michael
Painkiller
Keaton
guy.
part who is the Michael Keaton part on
It's
Painkiller?
not the same exact show. It's not, there's nobody really that prominent playing the doctors, if I'm
Okay.
mistaken.
Oh,
But
that's right. So Painkillers is more from the perspective of like everybody else and the Sacklers rather than the doctors, and the doctors are kind of just like on the back burner, or
yeah, kind of.
okay.
And and it's more so like the lady from Orange is the New Black,
What's her
Crazy
name?
Eyes.
Uzo Aduba?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
great. She's great on that.
Nice.
And she's like playing like a reporter who's also like affected by the opioid crisis, and like just the energy and like just pizzazz that her character brings is just entertaining. Like she's very whip smart and sassy, and just not in a stereotypical way, but like sassy in like a funny way, like in like a smart, like intelligent way that she like like a Dr. House way. But
Yeah.
yeah, uh, it was a good show. Pain Hustlers, it was just mediocre. 2.5 out of 5 for me.
Disappointing. Very, very disappointing. I wanted to read you off. So Chris Evans, right? It's interesting that we talked about Chris Evans and Josh Hutcherson on this podcast. Two people who I think we both can agree need to fire
Yeah.
their agents because just
Mhm.
two absolute talents that have a lot to offer and just keep getting typecast in the specific type of parts. Both had massive 1 decade long running, one half a decade long running franchise that made them household names, but they have just had a tough time finding good stuff outside of it. This is the list of Chris Evans' performance. I would say post Winter Soldier, which is when he really blew up as Captain America. You have Before We Go, which he also directed. You have Gifted, directed by Mark Webb, also starring McKenna Grace. You have The Red Sea Diving Resort for Netflix. Knives Out, which is probably the biggest thing that he's been in post what's it called? Post Avengers Endgame. Cameos in Free Guy and Don't Look Up. With his Don't Look Up cameo was cut. Voiceover in Lightyear. The Gray
No, he
Man, which
was in Don't Look Up. He was in Don't Look Up.
I thought they cut it.
No,
I thought
he
they
was
cut a
in it.
scene. Oh,
No, I remember him in that. Yeah,
when was he?
is when it was like that fake junket interview, and like
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Okay, I remember now.
yeah,
Yeah. So voiceover is Buzz Lightyear and Lightyear. The Gray Man, I liked it, but completely roasted. Ghosted, Pain Hustlers, and then the upcoming Red One, the Amazon Christmas special, Christmas movie directed by Jake Kasdan, starring himself and The Rock, along with J.K. Simmons as Santa. It's going to be another home run for him. I can only imagine. So yeah, Chris Evans. What the hell is going on here? Like, he's really talented.
yeah.
He's really charming. He's really funny. And you mean to tell me that the best thing he's got coming out in the next couple months is a voiceover on the Scott Pilgrim anime show? Come on, man.
I don't know. I'm looking more forward to Red One than the Scott Pilgrim show.
I mean, I hope that's good because I know you like those Jumanji movies better than me, but I am not a fan of those Jumanji movies, really, in hindsight. So
those are the first one was really
the
fucking
first one
entertaining.
is fine at best. It is fine at best. That is the best thing I can say about it.
Hey, that's a more interesting video game adaptation than the show of Scott Pilgrim, because
Sure.
why do we need a Scott Pilgrim show when we
With
have
the
the
exact
movie?
same cast. With
Yeah,
the exact same. It's just, to me,
yeah,
it's
it's
just an
the first
example.
job Johnny Simmons has had since like 2016.
Right?
Sad.
Very sad. Very
Uh,
sad. Very
but
sad. Very disappointing weekend overall. But
no, yeah. but
Yeah.
Chris Evans, he needs a better agent. But like with Pain Hustlers, like this is what I forgot to say is just like he just wanted to play Donnie Azoff in this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He infamously was like up for that role in
Wait, really?
Yeah, him and
Oh
JGL.
wow.
Him and JGL were the ones that
Oh.
missed. And
Oh.
Jonah got it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Alternate universe where either Chris Evans or Joseph Gordon-Levitt is Donnie Azoff. Wow, the possibilities.
Wouldn't be as good.
How the fuck was that talked about on the Rewatchables episode? I don't remember hearing that at all.
I think so. I think
Okay.
I
Okay.
think
I'm gonna have to go back and
I knew
re-listen to
that
that because
before
I don't
that,
remember that's the first I'm hearing about that. So yeah, so I do want to go and finish Pain Hustlers because what I've seen so far is good. The performances are good, but man, that's disappointing.
It definitely drops off in the second act when you realize, oh, it's not going to bring us anything else new
that we haven't seen
before, and Craig Gillespie could probably do it better.
That's disappointing.
Just because like this guy is just the wrong guy for David Yates.
David Yates.
He's just not the right guy for this. I'm sorry. It should have been Bowden and Fleck. They would have handled this subject matter a little bit more interestingly. I don't know. Maybe it made it feel a little bit more real because this just felt Netflix manufactured glossiness. Sorry.
It's disappointing. It's very, very disappointing. But with that being said, people, that's it. Hope you enjoyed your spooky season. Shocktober. It was a short one. It wasn't as big one.
Hustlers. It was horrifying.
Yeah, Paid Hustlers. Some of the scariest stuff we've seen so far. Killers of the Flower Moon. Kicked ass. I covered all the movies that I did at New York Film Festival, and then Loki and Exorcist. The fact that Exorcist Believer is probably the best horror movie we've gotten so far this month is truly, truly a frightening thing. Yeah, you heard me. I said it. I like that movie. I don't care. I said it. I don't care. I liked it. Oh man, people, we will be back next week in order to begin the final wrap up of awards run. We'll be talking about Invincible season 2, and I'm also going to talk about The Holdovers and Anatomy of a Fall, which I will be watching both of those this week. Dustin, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me on YouTube, Mr. G Movie Reviews. They can follow me on Letterboxd, Dustin Mason. They can follow me on Twitter, Dustar.
Absolutely. And of course, follow myself at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Be sure to follow the official Talking TV podcast across all platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us if you're watching us on Twitch. This episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts tomorrow. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next week.
Boo.
Invincible. It's back.